I found out my wife had a second husband, and they were planning something terrible. The floral scent of her perfume usually filled me with comfort. That morning, it felt like a suffocating shroud. My name's Ethan Vance, and I'm 48 now, but this story, this nightmare, began 5 years ago when I was 43. My wife, Clara, 40, was humming softly in the kitchen, making breakfast, just like any other Tuesday. I was checking my phone, casually scrolling through the news, when a notification popped up. A LinkedIn connection request, from a name I didn't recognize, David Miller, and beneath his profile picture, in bold letters, married to Clara Vance. My first thought was a mistake, a joke, someone playing a cruel prank. I clicked on his profile, my heart beginning to thump an erratic rhythm against my ribs. David Miller, age 42, occupation, architect, education, University of California, Berkeley. And then, under his About section, a line that made my blood run cold, happily married to Clara Vance for 8 wonderful years. 8 years. Clara and I had been married for 15. I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process the information. This wasn't some distant relative with the same name. This was my Clara. The profile picture showed him, a handsome man with kind eyes and a warm smile, standing next to my wife. Her arm was linked through his, her head tilted, that familiar, loving smile on her face. It was undeniably Clara, my Clara, and her hand, her left hand, clearly displayed a wedding ring. Not the one I gave her. A different one, a thicker, more ornate band. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I stumbled into the kitchen, the phone still clutched in my hand. Clara looked up, her smile softening as she saw me. "Morning, sleepyhead," she chirped. She seemed utterly normal, utterly oblivious to the earthquake that had just shattered my world. I managed a mumbled greeting, my voice thick with something akin to panic. I watched her, really watched her, as she moved around the kitchen. Every gesture, every glance, every shared moment now felt tainted, scrutinized. Had this been a lie all along? Was our entire 15 years together, our home, our life, a carefully constructed facade? I spent the rest of that day in a haze, feigning a sudden illness to get out of work. I couldn't focus, couldn't think straight. I meticulously went through David Miller's profile again and again, searching for an explanation. He had posts about their anniversaries, their vacations, even a picture of their dog, a fluffy white poodle, completely unlike our golden retriever, Buddy. It was a parallel life, unfolding publicly, shamelessly, for anyone to see. I couldn't confront her, not yet. I needed answers. I was an investigative journalist in my past life, before I settled into a comfortable marketing director role, and old habits die hard. My first step was discreet online digging. David Miller seemed legitimate. His firm was real, his college records checked out. He lived in a town about 2 hours' drive from ours. A different city, a different life. I focused on Clara's timeline. How could she be married to 2 men simultaneously for 8 years? Where did she go? What were her excuses? She often traveled for her work as a sales director for a pharmaceutical company. Long trips, sometimes weeks at a time. I always believed her. I was trusting, perhaps too trusting. My best friend, Mark Johnson, 44, a former police detective who had since opened his own private investigation agency, had always told me I was too soft. I needed his help, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him the full, humiliating truth. I started small. I checked her credit card statements. There were charges in David Miller's town, small ones, consistent with weekend trips or short stays. Dates matched her business trips. My heart sank with each confirmation. I checked her phone GPS history, or tried to. She had a new phone, and the history was wiped clean. Too clean. I hired a discreet private investigator, not Mark, not yet. Someone completely anonymous. I gave them David Miller's details, Clara's travel schedule, and a simple request: follow her on her next business trip. The waiting was agonizing. Every smile from Clara, every casual touch, felt like a deliberate lie. I played along, mirroring her affection, asking about her work, trying to sound normal. But inside, I was a coiled spring, wound-tight with suspicion and a growing sense of dread. Our daughter, Lily, who was then 12, seemed oblivious, happy, thriving. The thought of how this would impact her was a constant, crushing weight. The investigator's report came back quickly. Photos, videos, Clara, laughing, holding hands with David Miller in a park. Clara, kissing him goodbye on a porch. Clara, walking their poodle, their dog. It was all there, undeniable, horrifying proof. My 15-year marriage was a sham, built on a foundation of deception. Now I had the proof. But the question remained, why? Why 2 lives? Why 2 husbands? Was it about money, status, a twisted game? Clara had no financial problems that I knew of. Our life was comfortable, secure. She wasn't a gold digger, at least, not that I had ever seen. I started looking into David Miller's finances, subtly, using my old investigative skills. He was well off, but not ridiculously wealthy. His architecture firm was successful. There was no obvious financial gain for Clara from this double life. It seemed senseless. Then, I started paying attention to their interactions online, piecing together their social circles. I noticed a recurring figure in David Miller's network, a man named Victor Sterling, 55, a high-profile real estate developer with a controversial past, including allegations of fraud and money laundering, though nothing was ever proven. He seemed to pop up in photos with David and Clara, always smiling, always in the background. I dug into Victor Sterling. He had been involved in several large-scale development projects that had faced significant environmental and regulatory hurdles. And then it hit me. Clara's company was pharmaceutical, but their new division was heavily involved in environmental impact assessments for large-scale construction. Was there a connection? Was Clara using her position, her access to sensitive information, for some nefarious purpose? I began to suspect that her marriage to David Miller wasn't just a personal betrayal, but a strategic alliance. Perhaps David, an architect, was a conduit for Victor Sterling's projects, and Clara was providing inside information, perhaps even manipulating data for permits or approvals. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about a broken heart, it was about something far more dangerous. I brought everything to Mark Johnson, my best friend. He listened, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. "Marcus," he said, his voice quiet, "this is far beyond a simple affair. This is organized. This is dangerous." He agreed to help, off the books, leveraging his network of former colleagues and contacts. We started piecing together the puzzle. Clara's business trips often coincided with key regulatory deadlines for Victor Sterling's projects. Her pharmaceutical company had access to proprietary environmental data. It seemed she was feeding information, perhaps even altering reports, to fast-track Sterling's dubious developments. David Miller, the architect, likely provided the plans and legitimate facade. I continued to play the role of the devoted husband. It was excruciating, sharing our bed, exchanging pleasantries, while knowing the dark truth festered beneath the surface. I looked at Clara, at the woman I thought I knew, and saw a stranger, a calculating operative. Our daughter, Lily, would often climb into bed with us on weekend mornings, oblivious to the silent war being waged between her parents. Her innocence was a shield, a reason to push forward, to expose this without destroying everything. Mark's investigation uncovered more. He found shell companies, offshore accounts linked to Victor Sterling, and a clear paper trail connecting Clara's company's data to these illicit projects. He even found evidence of a specific, particularly toxic development that had been greenlit against all environmental recommendations, all thanks to manipulated data. This wasn't just about cheating, it was about potential environmental disaster, about putting lives at risk for profit. The terrible something they were planning wasn't just the destruction of my life, but a far wider, more insidious scheme. The hardest part was maintaining the facade. I watched Clara communicate with David, their tender moments, their intimate conversations, all while knowing it was a performance designed to keep her other life, her darker life, hidden. I learned her tells, her subtle cues, the slight tightening around her eyes when she was about to lie, the way she would toy with her wedding ring, the one I gave her when she was nervous. The opportunity came with Victor Sterling's biggest project yet, a massive residential complex planned on wetlands, a project that had been repeatedly rejected due to environmental concerns. This was their crowning achievement, the one that would net them millions. The crucial environmental impact report was due to be submitted, and Clara was flying out to oversee the final review. This was it. Mark and I had prepared everything. We had assembled a comprehensive dossier. The forged documents, the altered data, the financial transactions, the timeline of Clara's double life, complete with photographic evidence of her with David Miller and Victor Sterling. I acted even more loving, more trusting. I gave her a hug goodbye, a seemingly genuine kiss, as she left for her trip. Inside, my stomach churned with a mixture of dread and grim determination. This was the end of the line. Mark had briefed the federal authorities, who had been building a case against Victor Sterling for years but lacked the smoking gun. Our evidence was the missing piece. They set up a sting operation. Clara and David Miller were to meet Victor Sterling at a remote location, a seemingly innocent, celebratory dinner, after the report was submitted. I didn't go. I stayed home with Lily, feigning a sudden migraine. My parents called, asking if everything was all right. I reassured them, my voice tight. The phone call came in the dead of night. "Mark, it's done, Ethan. They got them all. Clara, David Miller, and Victor Sterling were arrested. The environmental impact report was proven to be a fraud. The shell companies were exposed. The entire network crumbled. The news broke quickly, a scandal that rocked the local development and pharmaceutical industries. My company was cleared, thanks to my proactive internal investigation and cooperation. The divorce was swift and brutal. Clara's lawyers tried to fight, but the evidence was overwhelming. The big reveal of her double life, her bigamy, her involvement in a massive environmental fraud scheme, ensured a quick, clean break for me. She went to prison, along with David Miller and Victor Sterling. The emotional fallout was immense. My parents were shattered, struggling to comprehend how the woman they adored could be capable of such deception. Lily, then 13, was devastated, confused by the sudden disappearance of her mother and the ugly truth that slowly emerged. It was a long, painful road of therapy, of honest conversations, of rebuilding trust. I had to explain, as best I could, the nature of deception, without shattering her innocence entirely. Buddy, our golden retriever, seemed to sense the shift. He stuck by my side, a silent, comforting presence. It's been 5 years since that morning I found the LinkedIn request. Clara is still in prison. My life is different now. I left my corporate job, leveraging my experience to become an independent consultant, helping companies protect themselves from corporate espionage and fraud. It was a painful education, but it gave me a new purpose. Lily is now 18, resilient, intelligent, and strong. She understands more now, though the scars remain. We talk openly about it. She's my everything, my reason for enduring the nightmare. The memory of Clara's radiant smile on our wedding day still haunts me sometimes, a chilling reminder of how easily deception can wear the mask of love. She married me to destroy my life. But I played along until the end, and in doing so, I didn't just save myself from ruin. I uncovered a far greater crime and, ultimately, reclaimed my life, piece by painful piece. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I wouldn't change a thing. I chose to fight, and I won.